gone from an iconic classic to another iconic classic, which I already reviewed, to one of the more frustrating films in this franchise, and that is Alien 3. The 3 times the terror. The bitch is back.
3 times the terror. Sigourney Weaver.
Oh man, Alien 3. How so frustrating are you and so disappointing? And this was 6 years after Aliens and many years after the original Alien. So this time is directed by my favorite director of all time, David Fincher, which he has proclaimed that he wants nothing to do with this movie. So Alien 3 released in 1992, and this is a frustrating one because it's a good thing I bought the anthology box set, because watching the documentary of this, which I highly recommend to all of you guys, I'm pretty sure it's on YouTube, of course, went through a very tumultuous, hellish production, and it is fairly evident how much crazy shit and how much production troubles it went through. So we're going to talk about this right now. Before I get into the premise or anything, I feel like the production history is very interesting, so I want to focus on it. This movie faced countless problems during the production. The success of Aliens, Fox saw this as printing money, and they just had to get another one out right away. And so what happened was Fox went through so many versions of the script. There was a script by William Gibson, of course, which had, of course, the Space Empire and such. And you have so many other interesting ideas into this, which, of course, knowing the filmmakers, they wanted to do it in a different direction. And it was going to have Hicks, of course, be the lead character, and Ripley and Newt were going to go off and go live peacefully, and they wouldn't come back until this one. And originally they wanted Rennie Harlin to direct this movie, and things were getting off the ground, and Rennie Harlin wanted to go in different directions until they could not see eye to eye, and they wanted to visit the alien home world and having the aliens involving Earth. And so William Gibson and him didn't see eye to eye, and it was very action oriented, including an extended cast and circles the search. And so, of course, this was the script that got put into an audiobook, and of course, that did not happen. Rennie Harlin decided to drop out, and of course, we ended up with a different other version. And so following his departure, we had the script by Eric Red, which he had less than 2 months on this. And the script that he wanted to do was wanted a new set of characters and subplots, of course, and introducing the new breeds of the aliens. And you had a team of Special Air Forces boarding this. And of course, they thought the script would be too much, and they thought it would be way too pricey, with the townsfolk facing hundreds of alien warriors and in an all-out battle. But they said no to this script, and so he quit. And then you had one with David Towie, which once again had the fall of communism and the Cold War analogies. And it was going to be set on a prison planet, kind of similar to what we see in the final movie. Ripley was nowhere to be found, which Fox, they didn't like that idea as well. And I just thought that really didn't do very well either with the studio. And then Vincent Ward once again had an idea for one, which was a wooden planet with prisoners and such. And then there was other scripts where it was going to be more like The Thing, where people couldn't really trust each other. And so that would have been an interesting idea to go. And there was going to be 2 sequels simultaneously, and Ripley will come back in the 4th one. And they tried to get so many other people like Ridley Scott to come back. and he didn't want to come back. And James Cameron, he said he would not have minded doing another film. He just didn't want to do one right away. We finally got on the script that we got with David Goller and Walter Hill, which I got some shit to say about the script. And then we had David Fincher, who has gone on to be one of my favorite directors of all time and make some great shit that's in my 100 favorites of all time. Like, of course, Seven. You have The Social Network, of course, which I do have right here on Blu-ray, of course. And then he will go on and make one of my favorite movies of all time, which is in the top 5, The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. So it's amazing that he went on from the frustrating that is this to shit like this and Seven and all that. So, of course, David Fincher clearly did not have any say-so into this. He was brought in just to do Fox's bidding, and of course, this movie went through a lot of hell without a complete script.
He would have to get on the phone like at midnight and talk to the brass at Fox, and they'd be saying, "Don't shoot the next day. We want to cut that." I felt it was quite arbitrary, and again, it all arose from him not being the script.
I think the biggest problem David had was that we never had a concrete draft of a script to go by. And here he is directing his first movie, following in the likes of Ridley Scott and James Cameron. And, you know, it is very difficult to balance all of those things. And I think that when you go through any production, it's difficult. It's hard. I think when you go through your first one without a script.
And so David Fincher, he beat himself up so badly that he took full responsibility. He does not like talking about this movie in any way, shape, or form. The only time he does talk about it is one time, and he said, "No one hates Alien 3 more than me," but also an interview that I found of him talking about it.
Tutorial at all. I mean, I'll say this. If the movie is great, I'm gonna get too much credit, and if the movie sucks, I'm gonna get too much blame. My first movie is fairly well known. It was a disaster. I stupidly felt that the people who were financing it had more to lose than I did if it was bad. I sort of allowed myself to be steered into this communal making, and then when the shit hits the fan, all of a sudden everybody scatters and you're the guy standing there going, wait, who's got a suggestion now? So if I'm gonna take the blame, if I'm gonna take the brunt of it, I'm gonna make the decisions.
This movie got a lot of mixed and negative reactions, didn't do as well as the first two. And this movie, all that production trouble made it into the final film, and therefore I would like to call this a frustrating, interesting disaster with Alien 3. So let's talk about this. This is directed by David Fincher, stars Sigourney Weaver, Charles Dutton, Lance Henriksen, Charles Dance, and Brian Glover, and Paul McGann. This is written by David Goller, Walter Hill, and Larry Ferguson, of course. This is immediately after the events of Aliens, where Ellen Ripley is the only survivor, where she crash lands on Fiorina, which is a bleak wasteland inhabited by former inmates of the planet's maximum security prison. Once again, Ripley must face skepticism and the aliens it hunts down and the prisoners as guards. Without weapons and technology, Ripley must lead the men into battle against the terrifying creature. Yep. This is going to be one of those times where I'm just going to let the freaking frustration come out. This is not one of the worst movies of the year. This is just a frustrating film coming off of two master classes in between all of that production trouble I just mentioned. And also the fact that Sigourney Weaver She was paid a lot of money to come back and do this, only if they agreed not to use guns, which bad on you, Sigourney Weaver, because that was not the best idea whatsoever.
How the fuck would you show me something if I couldn't have it then?
I initially liked this movie when I first saw it, but even then when I first saw it, I knew something wasn't right when it comes to this. But years later, having watched this movie again, which I watched the assembly cuts, and when I watched version of the movie that we did get, I don't hate this as much as everyone else, but I don't love it as much as everyone else. I'm in the middle of this. I know some Alien fans hate this, a lot of y'all hate this. I know there are some people who actually defend Alien 3, and that's fine. But for me, this movie is a frustrating disaster on all accounts. Things I do like here. It's not like I completely hate this movie. I just want to get the good things out of the way first. I can praise the cinematography aspect here. David Fincher directing this movie, and despite the fact that he hated doing this, I will say Alex Thompson does a very good job in the cinematography department. There are some great looking shots here. It looks beautiful from a visual standpoint. It looks competent. You can see the promise of David Fincher, which will only get better in next movies that he does get. He had more control over the direction, and they gave him a better script. I feel like David Fincher really could knock this out of the park. Some moments of action here and some moments of horror that does get to you, of course, especially with the dog xenomorph. That is pretty heartbreaking, of course. I really did like the fact that they did try to do something a little bit different. I will also say Elliot Goldenthal's score is also really good here. For all the problems I have with it, the score is not one of them. The production design by Norman Reynolds is great here. The practical stuff on the xenomorph looks fantastic, and when the movie does have its merit, I can watch it for a time waster. I will say I like the alien in here. The acting in this movie is also really good. Sigourney Weaver, even though she is hugely responsible for this, because she said, I want to get killed off. I don't want to come back unless I have no guns. Unless I can shave my hair and be done with this. They were kind enough to say, no, you're not going to hang out with the xenomorph, but we're going to give you this. So, but she does fine for what she's given. I just don't like where they take the character of Ripley by this movie. I think it's just really dumb in the decision they try to make here, and it makes it really damn frustrating, of course, for me as a fan of this. Charles S. Dutton, Charles Dance. You also have Paul McGann and Brian Glover and Lance Henriksen for a few minutes. The late Pete Postleway, Danielle Edmond. The acting is fine despite the crappy script that they are given here. So I'll say they do fine with what is given her, and I will say they did the best they could with what is given her. Because everything else in this movie is a prime example of studio interference, clashing of different things, and just a fucking frustrating of a film. Production faults really does hurt this movie. Again, take all of the production troubles I just mentioned and apply it here. What do you get? A frustrating mess of a movie here. Biggest issue when it comes to this movie is trying to go back to the first film, which I can appreciate the fact that you were trying to go back to the first film, but when you have two great movies, especially Aliens, which set the bar for the franchise so high, there's almost no place to go but up. So the fact that you're going from multiple Aliens to the next, which was a misinterpreted thing, because we were all promised that Alien 3 would take place on Earth, and by that teaser trailer,
We discovered in space, no one can hear you scream. 1992, we will discover on Earth, everyone can hear you scream.
You don't get any of that shit. You get a misjointed, misguided mess of a film. And it feels like they did not want to take the chance to continue what the first film did, or even that second movie did. Aside from Charles Dance's character and Ripley to a certain extent, I don't really care about any of these new characters at all. I didn't really care about them as much because even with the assembly cuts, there's not much character stuff that they try to do here, and I feel like it's really frustrating here. They're all just a bunch of bald guys who have done bad things and they find religion and such. Not much they give you in terms of a character, and that's unfortunate too, because when you come off of first two amazing movies, you got nowhere to go above. You have to continue to raise that bar. And so the fact that we don't get to care about anyone like Dylan or Andrews or Francis Errol or Walter Garlick or Morse, you don't get to care about anyone in this, and that really does suck because this is the third movie in the series, and the one that's supposed to end the trilogy, it doesn't really get to be a ending to a trilogy. It just feels like just a frustrating mess of a movie. The effects look pretty damn terrible when they're CGI. This was 1992. I'ma say wasn't good. I'ma say they didn't look good. There are certain scenes where you're following him in POV in CGI form, and it does not look convincing whatsoever. And I know they had a very troubled production, so I'll try to cut them some slack here. But it just feels like they really screwed the pooch there. And I'm supposed to be watching a movie about a freaking xenomorph, and I don't get anything out of this whatsoever. And that's frustrating to say because I really love the first two. It doesn't help with the fact that this movie just, of course, when it comes to undoing everything, when it comes to what we see of Ripley, is just completely undone and not for our viewing pleasure. And the tone is so bleak and so depressing that you feel like you just don't want to enjoy watching this. I don't get that same level of fun as I did with the first two, and even the Afternoon Tune could say the same thing, or any of you Alien fans who hasn't really done much. So it just feels like Ripley in this is nowhere near as badass as here. I like the other ideas of what they were going to do with Ripley going forward, so there's almost no place for her to go. So you cut to this movie, and what the fuck did they choose to do? You choose to kill her off in the most unsatisfactory way. Not only that, she is just very distraught and depressed over what happened with Newton Hicks, and it does not make it interesting whatsoever. It just makes it borderline frustrating being a fan of this Alien film. And I just did not enjoy that decision that you made. That was frustrating as all kinds of hell, and made it totally frustrating for me to get through, man. But let's get to the obvious one, because I'm saving this for last. My biggest complaint when it comes to this movie, the first couple of minutes of this movie, I hate the first couple of minutes of this movie. As a fan of Alien, and not as much as a lot of purists, but as a fan of this franchise and as a fan of Aliens being my favorite, I hate the fact that they negate everything that we gained and we lost and we won by the end of Aliens with Newt, Hicks, and Bishop. Ripley and Hicks being a couple, her taking care of this little girl, all of that shit is undone in the first couple minutes of the credits. And it fucking irritates me.
Emotional damage!
Hell no. Come on, man. Damn.
I'm just not feeling it. Something's missing.
One horrible idea after another.
Motherfucker, are you out of your damn mind?
Every time I watch this, not as bad as most purists, but it still frustrates me on some level because there's no reason for them to do that shit. You just did it because you wanted to do it, and I hated that decision.
You fucked up, bitch! Stop it! That's right. You should think long and hard about what you did.
Bad choice of words for a liar.
What the hell is that?
Loser! You're a loser! Are you feeling sorry for yourself? Well, you should be, because you are dirt! You make me sick, you big baby!
Why would you make us sit through 2 hours and 16 minutes of this masterpiece, or 2 hours and 36 minutes, just to kill them off here? Just to kill off those characters. David Goller and Walter Hill, you're responsible for that as well as Fox. No wonder why so many fans hated that, especially James Cameron. As much criticism as I give him for his Avatar movies and the fact that he kind of did this with Terminator Dark Fate, but that didn't really bother me as much, even I can agree with him. Even Michael Biehn as such, and anyone who's a big fan of Aliens, yeah, definitely. The fact that David Fincher, he got so screwed over and handed a shitty deal here, and the fact that he's taking so much responsibility of himself, which this is not entirely his fault. Don't sit there and blame it and say it's entirely your fault. It's just a frustrating mess. Overall, Alien 3, I don't hate it. I certainly don't love it. The biggest thing that frustrates me when it comes to this movie is that there's things in this movie I can like, but the best way to put it is a frustrating film to watch with wasted potential. Therefore, I call this a disappointing film, considering the fact that we came off of 2 great masterpieces, and you had 6 fucking years to get this right and give us the movie that we were promised and lied to us. Overall, it's a watchable film, of course. There's things in here I like in certain parts, but trying to watch the overall movie in its entirety is such a frustrating disappointment. It's not one of the worst in the franchise, but it's for damn sure one of the most disappointing films in the series, and one of the more disappointing movies, and one of the more disappointing films in this, especially when you could come off of Alien and Aliens. And I don't blame anyone who says they hate this movie. If you're someone who likes this movie, feel free to defend. Feel free to tell me why you hate this movie as well. I want to talk about this movie in a more civilized manner, of course. So, overall, try to be civilized about this either way. This is a frustrating but interesting disaster of a film. Well, that's going to do it for the video that you just watched. If you want to see more, my channel icon is up here. If you want to see more content from me, all my social medias are right here in this end card. I will also leave a playlist and a video here for you to see what the channel is about. As always, acknowledge me, stay epictastic, join the Epictasticness, and you guys keep it cool.